Police have arrested a 33-year-old man over the murder of an 8-year-old girl at Nive in the Volta region. This was after the body of the girl, Shine Ajima, who was initially reported missing on Monday, was discovered near a refuse dump. There were signs some of the body parts had been tampered with, leaving members of the community suspicious she may have been murdered for ritual purposes. Ivy Setoji reports the mother of the deceased has been left in a state of shock. Her report is read to you.
The body of 8-year-old Shine Ajima was discovered not too far from a refuse dump close to the home of a resident 3 days after she went missing. Neighbors are pointing accusing fingers at the owner of a home close to where the body was found. They want him arrested and prosecuted.
Now the suspects are on the run, so we want the police to come and help us. They should find the guys for us so that our mother to start to calm down. Up to now, the girl we have found her but dead. So whoever is in connection with this murder should just own up, or the police is after them.
The traumatized mother of a deceased wonders why anyone will kill her daughter.
My daughter went missing on Monday. We searched the entire neighborhood, but we didn't find her. I saw her dead on Wednesday.
Mankrado of Nive, Togbe Apasu, suspects the girl was murdered for ritual purposes. DSP Prince Dogbache is public relations officer of the Volta Region Police.
We have really made a lot of progress by way of the leads that we have picked. Currently, we are pursuing this suspect, and we are giving assurance that in the very shortest period, we'll be able to catch up with him. So he assists us in our investigation. Yes, the police were there. The crime scene management team were also deployed to manage the crime scene and then take possible pieces of evidence. That is the heart of investigation. If there is any way you link someone to a crime, what is critical is what you pick from the scene of crime. And we have a particular individual that has been linked to the crime, and we are currently pursuing him.
He says security has been beefed up in the community. Ivy Setoji's report for Joy News.
Well, Ivy now joins me with details of the arrest of the suspect being held in connection with the murder Fofo Tagbo. The chiefs and residents, with the help of the Fulani in Adaklu, apparently apprehended the suspect and then handed him over to the police. Ivy, you tell us more about this arrest.
Okay, so the police have also apprehended a 12-year-old accomplice of Fofo earlier today to help with the investigation. Earlier today also, the police command had a conference to tell the public what they have done so far, and that they are asking the community to remain calm as continue with the investigation, that other accomplices will also be arrested. For now, we have 4 and 12-year-old who were arrested the police in their investigation.
All right, thank you very much, Ivy Setoji. Now, moving on, weeks after she was rescued from the den of 2 self-styled pastors who kidnapped and raped her multiple times, the 18-year-old victim is still dealing with the trauma of the ordeal. Unable to speak, Precious, not her real name, is communicating by writing out her thoughts. Her parents also say she has become suicidal. Pamela Dom and Ivy Setoji have more in this report.
After all this, my dad has been going through ups and downs to make sure that I get a better treatment. But that is not what I want. What I want is that justice should be served. They shouldn't just go scot-free. You see, when they go scot-free, it happens that it will continue repeating itself again and again and again, and nobody will be saying anything about it. I want I myself to be the last, because I don't like the way I'm feeling, and I don't want someone else to go through that same pain.
It's been weeks, nearly a month after she was rescued. But 18-year-old Precious is still battling the scars of a 4-month-long experience of multiple sexual abuse at the hands of her captors.
They usually beat me with planks when they want to have sex with me every day. After this, they find out that I was months pregnant, and those boys checked, and then they gave me a drink. It's in form of a water, but it's bitter, and when you take it, your stomach gets very hot, and you started feeling very bad.
The two men, George Andrews and Maxwell Peter, who posed as pastors before kidnapping her, have been remanded and are set to reappear in court on September 16. Now, Precious's family is struggling to cater for the medical bills of the 18-year-old. Her mother says all her savings from operating a restaurant along the Flower border have been spent trying to restore her to normalcy.
All that I have labored for years, since April, 21 of April, Easter Sunday, till today, all my money is finished. From this hospital to another, from this hospital to another, from this until we reach this Kolebu.
She says she is helpless.
And I'm just asking God, please, to help me. Let justice interfere in this my case, because I'm nobody. You understand me? I don't have anything. I'm nobody.
There is a bigger issue. She is suicidal.
As soon as you start talking about that thing, she becomes wild. She now easily gets angry. She wrote something which was a little bit disturbing. I gave it to the doctor that she feels like taking her life. We are taking treatment at the Kolebu Teaching Hospital, where at the same time she has to be going to a Flower because of the police case, court case. Shuffling up and down, and it creates a lot of problems.
He tells Joy News his foster daughter's captors allegedly swore she would die if she told anyone about the ordeal.
She said the boys caught their hand and the blood was coming, and they were speaking, invoking, and caught her blood. And then they did blood covenant that if she dares reveal them, she will die. So that is one thing that has been haunting her. She asked me, will I die? I said, you will not die. So these are some of the traumatic concerns.
He's however encouraged by assurances by Ketu South parliamentary candidate and former Deputy Tourism Minister Jifa Ablagomashi to facilitate his daughter's return to school once she recovers from the trauma.
She met the family and spoke to the mother and all that, and promised that she will go to the school where she was given placement, that is Mauku girls, and talk to them and see to it that she quickly become herself and go back to school. And I think that's good news.
The hospital will be almost her second home, and when night falls, she will be left on her own to battle her fears in the hope that this too shall pass. Reporting for Joy News, Komla Adom and Ivy Setoji.
Participants at the first National Justice Conference organized by the International Justice Mission in collaboration with the Bible Society of Ghana are calling for regular police patrols on the Volta Lake to deal with the phenomenon of children being engaged in hazardous work. This, they believe, will be one of the ways to curb child trafficking and other forms of injustice, especially against children. The demands were contained in a communique read by the General Secretary of the Christian Council, Reverend Dr. Cyril Fayose, after the conference in Accra. Maxwell Agbagba has more.
From the banks of the Volta Lake, it looks beautiful with a lot of economic prospects. But a trip on the Volta Lake reveals harrowing stories of how children as young as 10 are compelled to dive into the lake without protection to untangle nets for their masters. Some of them trafficked from far places to islands around the lake. These and other forms of social injustice necessitated a conference by the International Justice Mission. The conference, which was on the theme Social Justice Key to National Development, brought together personnel of the Ghana Immigration Service, police, judicial service, civil society organizations, students, the clergy, and more. Speaking at the event, Deputy Gender and Social Protection Minister Frida Prempeh called on the National Media Commission and the Ghana Journalists Association to do more to stop what she describes as on-air injustice.
We see numerous injustices meted in the church, where some self-acclaimed pastors mix concoctions for church members to drink in the name of miracles. Some churches has become rather a ground for grave abuses and misconduct, where children are forced to confess on camera about accepting that they are witches and wizards. I would like to use this medium to appeal to the National Media Commission, the Standard Board Authority, and the Ghana Journalists Association to help us monitor the contents that are aired on our airwaves.
Wife of the Vice President of Ghana, Samira Baumia, said despite limited resources, Ghana is making significant strides to combat child trafficking.
So the question is, why is it happening still? It means that people are conniving in communities, so people are not speaking up about it, people are not standing up against it. The government of Ghana is taking significant steps to address the issue of human trafficking, despite limited resources. Ghana has increased its law enforcement efforts by prosecuting and convicting an increased number of traffickers, including several convictions related to forced labor on the Volta Lake.
A communique read on behalf of participants called for regular police patrols on Lake Volta to effectively deal with the problem of child trafficking and the use of children for hazardous work on the lake. Here is General Secretary of the Christian Council, Reverend Dr. Cyril Fayosi.
Institutions and organizations should be supported. Police must be resourced with appropriate equipment, including boats to patrol the lake and enforce the laws. Social welfare needs to be supported at the district, regional, and national levels with the requisite training and logistics. Challenges in the fight against child trafficking. The primary challenges include 1, denial that there is actually an issue.
Meanwhile, Acting Director of the Anti-Human Trafficking Unit at the Gender Ministry, Abna Asari, says sometimes parents will give out their children to boat owners on the Volta Lake to be used for fishing are sometimes unable to identify them after they are rescued. Speaking at a panel discussion at the conference on the theme Social Justice, a Tool for National Development, she stated some of the children are permanently scarred after they are trafficked to go and work on the Volta Lake. There is more on the panel discussion in this report.
Some of them come with bilharzia, skin rashes, some hole in heart, some their eye is choked because they dived and a stick has choked their whole eye and they need a surgery. There are some that come, the boat, they hit their back and they've become hunchbacks. And I'm sad to say, if you give them even bed, they are afraid to sleep on a simple mattress because of the trauma, the abuse, and what we call the slave masters do not even allow them to sleep. So panic attacks and all that. It will surprise you, some parents are not able to identify their children because they gave them out as at age 3, age 4, age 7, and the child have been in slavery for like 10 years.
High Court Judge Justice Georgina Mensah-Decha has been talking about how a child victim relapsed into a traumatized state when she saw her abuser.
I like the victim sits this way facing me and the accused person. So there's no direct eye contact because there's one eye contact and the facial expression made can just freeze a victim. The person will not speak again or a witness. When I was at the gender-based violence court, we didn't have a screen. So what I did, because I had got some training outside, was just by using sitting arrangement. You know, Ghana, everything we say there's no money.
George Achibra, who is a member of an NGO helping to fight child trafficking, says one of the factors militating against their work is interference.
Alongside with this, one of the strongest things that also are permeating some holes into this are interferences, which is coming from all angles. It comes from legal leaders, it comes from chiefs, opinion leaders, even as much as we had at the attack is coming from within.
So where are they going to interfere? Do they go to the courts, to the police?
They run from the beginning to wherever they can reach.
Country Director of the International Justice Mission, Wool Latrop, says ignorance and apathy are some of the causes of child trafficking.
Ignorance or apathy. either people, especially in trafficking, they say, I started off by talking about labor versus child help versus child trafficking. It's because this is my job, and so commonly I talk to somebody and they roll their eyes and they say, in Ghana, it's our culture that kids work. And they don't know that I grew up on a farm and I worked too. So that's nothing new to Ghana. It's not part of the culture. It happens all over the world. So it seems like if we were to poll 80 people in Accra, or 100 people in Accra, 80 people would say that child trafficking doesn't exist, or what they would think was child trafficking was helping your uncle do some chores on the weekend or something, and that's just not the reality. So the enemy is ignorance and apathy, people just not caring when they do know.
Watching Joy News Prime, we're taking a break, but still ahead. Government commissioned report on suspended electricity concessionaire agreement says it found no valid demand guarantee issued by Qatar-based Aquaculture Insurance. The report contains other interesting revelations which we'll share with you. But later on in the bulletin, the 10th edition of Adom Praise is underway at the Perez Dome. Over live to the venue to bring you some of the music that's playing over there. We're taking a break. Stay tuned in. We're back in a bit. Welcome back to Joy News Prime. A government report on the electricity concessionaire agreement, which was suspended in July, has revealed that over $12 million paid by Power Distribution Services (PDS) as guarantee was not received by the Qatari insurance firm Aquaculture. The report cited by Joy News indicates the insurance firm Aquaculture, as a result, did not issue a valid guarantee on behalf of PDS. The government report comes just a day after the leakage of a media commissioned report on the same matter. Malik Dabu has been going through the report and joins me in the studio with details. Hello, Malik.
Hello.
So we know that this government commissioned report has come out. It comes just a day after we cited the media commissioned report. I'd first like you to tell us what is contained in this report commissioned by the government of Ghana. And then later on in the bulletin, or shortly in the bulletin, we would also have the thoughts of Kwame Gentwa, who's an energy analyst. He's standing by to give us his thoughts on that as well. But let's start with you, Malik. What are the details contained in this report?
Because so Elvis, this Israel, this is a report which was compiled by as a result of a meeting, a 5-member committee led by Interior Minister Ambrose Derry, and of course, Deputy Attorney General Godfrey Dami went to Doha, and they went to Doha specifically on August 7, 2019. They had meetings with Aquaculture. That meeting itself became necessary after government took steps to suspend the PDS, the agreement that handed over assets of ECG to PDS. Now, the government did that suspension because a letter came from a company called Aquaculture. This is a Qatari company. This company wrote in reply to a letter which was sent to it by ECG, asking whether demand guarantees that were submitted by PDS in favor of or for the benefit of ECG were authentic. Now, when Aquaculture replied and said those documents were not authentic and gave some reasons why that was the case, government then decided that in order to secure the assets of ECG, it needed to suspend the agreement in the first place and then send this 5-member delegation to Qatar, Doha, to go and have a conversation with Aquaculture. Now, in that meeting, which took place on 7th August, Aquaculture took steps to explain to government why it wrote the letter that it wrote. And that letter was signed by Haq Musa. Now, in that letter, and also in that meeting, they pointed out that, one, the official of Aquaculture who signed the demand guarantees that were submitted by PDS exceeded his power and his authority. Now, all of us know that in companies, everybody has a limit to your power. You and I have limits to what we can do. There are those above us who have limits to what they can do, and all the way
goes all the way to the chief executive.
Absolutely. So the argument they made is that this guy, Yahya Al-Nouri, who signed the demand guarantees that were submitted to ECG by PDS, exceeded his powers. He exceeded his authority. Therefore, he lacked capacity to sign these documents. The reason they argued that is by their own constitution, that's the constitution establishing Al-Quds as a private company, the level to which Al-Nouri could sign or approve agreements that bind the company was $15 million. But this was demand guarantee that provided insurance cover up to $350 million. Now, they argued that given that this guy exceeded his powers, given also that Al-Quds itself did not even have capacity to provide cover up to $350 million. They said the total net worth of this company is $170 million. How can a company whose total net worth is $170 million provide security cover worth $350? So they said they didn't have capacity to do that. The other thing is that they did not even have any application properly brought before the company for asking them to provide this demand guarantee. That is because this Al-Nouri guy, who was in charge of their reinsurance, took these documents and kept them to himself. These are claims by Al-Quds that so the company didn't have the capacity, the guy who signed the documents didn't have capacity, that he ought to have made recommendations to the board of Al-Quds to approve these kinds of arrangements, that he did not make that recommendation. What he did was to get a low-level employee also of Al-Quds to sign these agreements and to submit them to PDS, which then onwardly submitted them to ECG. Now, the government argues that on the basis of all of the things that Al-Quds said, they think that the ECG or PDS did not submit a valid demand guarantee to ECG. That's the conclusion they reached on the basis of the arguments that were made by Al-Quds in that meeting.
We also know that there was a MEDA commissioned report that also looked at the same thing. How different is what the government report is saying from what the MEDA commission report has?
Now, let me say from the outstart that if you look at the observations that were made in that FTI report, and FTI is a private consulting firm which was contracted by MEDA to do an investigation into this matter after government took the decision to suspend the agreement. Now, FTI listed 11 conclusions. When you look at those conclusions, they mirror to a very large extent the observations that have been made in government's report. There are slight differences though. The FTI conclusion on the matter of fraud and the matter of capacity of Al-Nouri to sign the demand guarantees is simply this. They quote a case, their lawyers quote a case, a cassation case, which was decided in Belgrade. In that cassation court case, the court held that any person who represents a company and enters into an agreement with third parties in excess of the person's powers, that agreement is binding on the company in respect of that case. And they simply said that the third party has no way of knowing that this person is making representations which are in excess of their powers and their authority. Therefore, if the third party relied on that person, to the extent that the person is an honest, fair representative and a recognized one of the company, the decision that the person has taken should be binding on the company. So, but that's not a conclusion government has reached. So that's one slight difference between...
So of the two reports that we have, we know the reports are out, but we don't have any position per se from both government or MEDA. Absolutely not. Of course, but MEDA insists that there are publications as of this morning that suggested that they had rejected the FTI reports. MEDA says that's absolutely not Those
true.
Publications are
Those
not true.
publications are false.
All right. We're going on to on Skype and we'll get to speak with Kwame Gentua, who's an energy analyst and who has also been following this case. He has seen both reports, and I'm going to ask him exactly what his thoughts are. Thank you very much for speaking with us, Mr. Gentua. So what are your thoughts on the two reports and all that's been playing out?
Yes, I'm taken from where your what's his name again?
Malik.
where Malik left off. When you look further at the case he indicated, it also says, and I quote, "While this case may provide the basis to proceed in a lawsuit against Al-Qut, it should be noted that K&L stated that it is difficult for K&L to determine whether or not Al-Nouri had apparent due authority to bind Al-Qut. They would need to do a separate and further analysis to make this determination." It goes to show that it's not an easy thing to use that secession ruling. Now, I've looked at both reports, and the basis of both reports is Al-Nouri. So I asked myself the question, who brought Al-Nouri to the table? In terms of Danwell and Joe Australia, who introduced Al-Nouri to these two companies? And isn't it strange that with such huge amount, 350 million, if you're going to a reinsurer, do you not start from the top? You need to go to the powers that be in that company and tell them this is what we want to do. How come it started from somebody at a lower level? These are questions we need to ask, but it's obvious that both reports have indicated that Al-Nouri had no power to do what he did.
Even though Al-Nouri has no power to do what he did, as Malik has indicated, there are precedents where if an agent of the company has taken such a decision on behalf of the company, it tends to bind on the company.
Well, it depends. At the time this was being done, was the agent an employee of that company?
Yes, he was.
If he was an employee of that company, did he have the mandate to do exactly that? He did not have the mandate.
So the issue is that he may not have the mandate, but how is anybody else outside the company supposed to know?
We are supposed to do due diligence. With such amounts of money, we are supposed to do due diligence to find out whether the people we are dealing with are the right people.
Malik has a point to make quickly before I can.
And Mr. Janto, I do not quite agree that Yahya Al-Nouri was a low-level employee. He's not a low-level employee. Al-Nouri, as at the time he was contacted by Joe Australia, and by the way, the government-owned report indicates that Al-Qut admits that they have had prior dealings with Joe Australia, and the point person was Al-Nouri. It was Al-Nouri because Al-Nouri's designation is the person who is responsible for dealing with reinsurance. It is the reason why he was the contact person. The only point of departure, they argue, is that he exceeded his limit. His limit was $15 million, that he exceeded that by entering into an agreement that would have bound the company for $350 million. So he's not quite a low-level employee.
Are we saying that Al-Nouri didn't know this before he entered into this? He's an employee of the company. He should know the limit of the company. He should know how much money the company can reinsure any other insurance company. And if he had that knowledge, why then did he go on to do what he did?
Now, Mr. Gentile, how do you see this progressing?
You know, it's a cocktail of so many things that we need to take it one by one and stretch it out. But from the word go, unfortunately, PDS haven't lived up to the contract itself. And so based on that basis, I think the contract should be abrogated. When you look at the report from FT Consultants, and they talk about how PDS used money from ECG to pay their guarantees, it is wrong because these guarantees were supposed to have been paid before assets were handed over to them. And on that score, perhaps that was what was being termed, in very comments begin and close, as fraudulent. And based on that, I don't see how the FNT report can state that there was no fraud on behalf of PDS. And by the way, they weren't able to also interview Musa, the Musa gentleman. And so if they weren't able to interview him, that's how, when you look at the conclusions, number 8, where they indicate that we were unable to independently obtain Alcoot's insurance license, and officials from Alcoot refused to produce it when KNL requested it during their meeting. As such, we do not know contents of the license and are unable to determine if, as a general matter, Alcoot is permitted by its license to reinsure a portion of the risk assumed by a primary insurer. But that was made known in the government delegations, documents, and meetings with Alcoot.
All right.
So, for me, there's a bit of a challenge with the document from FNT.
Okay. Thank you very much, Kwame Gento. Kwame Gento is an energy analyst, and he was sharing his thoughts with us as far as this PDS, or the Electricity Concessionaire Agreement, is concerned. You're watching Joy News Prime. We're taking a break. Still ahead in the bulletin. In business, Institute of Chartered Accountants, Ghana clarifies fines slapped on 4 audit firms, explaining they do not play a role in the collapse of the failed banks. But thank you very much, Malik Dabo, for sharing your thoughts with us and giving us the details of this report commissioned by government. We're taking a break. Emmanuel Vajuyafi will be back in a bit with business. The Ministry of Fisheries and Aquaculture will, by the end of 2019, launch its Aquaculture for Food and Jobs policy. According to Sector Minister Elizabeth Afole-Quay, the project is aimed at improving Ghana's depleting fish stock and ensure an adequate all-year-round supply of fish whilst employing the youth. She was speaking at the James Camp prison here in Accra when the ministry and inmates harvested the first catch after the fish pond was stocked in February this year. Henry Kwesi Badu's report read to you.
As part of activities to roll out the Aquaculture for Food and Jobs policy, the Ministry of Fisheries earlier this year piloted the program by providing feed and fingerlings to the James Camp prisons and other selected farms across the country. Months after this intervention, they have harvested the first catch.
I cannot be more excited to see the little that we started in February this year expand to this size. We came to the James Camp prison in February to donate to them about 327 bags of fish feed, and also to donate to them some fingerlings. Further on, we've been able to construct additional fish ponds for them, and also for them to stock the fish pond with more fingerlings.
According to the Fisheries Ministry, the policy, which will be rolled out before the end of the year, is part of efforts to boost local production to meet increasing demand. Elizabeth Afole-Quay is Minister for Fisheries and Aquaculture.
Within the last quarter of this year, by the close of the year, we would have launched Aquaculture for Food and Jobs program. We have done the piloting, so we at the launch we want to showcase things that we have actually done. We want to increase our fish production. We have a huge fish production deficit of over 60,000 metric tons. So we want to bridge this gap by using fish farming to bridge the gap. You are also aware that this year we did an unprecedented close season for artisanal fishermen. This is all in our quest to ensure that we improve fish production in Ghana.
Deputy Director of the James Camp Prisons, Patience Bafo-Boni, urged fish farmers, institutions and individuals to help in rehabilitating and integrating inmates back into the society.
All in all, we all know that support from government alone cannot make the impact we wish to see, to tell the positive story about the prisons as an establishment. To do effective rehabilitation and reformation, for effective reintegration which guarantees our safety in the society. We need support in all areas. And at this juncture, I want to humbly entreat all corporate bodies to come on board. We are able to live our lives normally if we change these people we have neglected. I can assure you that half the time we are also contributing to the criminality in the country. And all of us must now come on board to change lives, because they are all like us. They will not die in prison.
The National Anti-Gallantry Task Force Operation Vanguard has decried the death of 2 locals during an operation at Ayamfuri in the central region, describing it as unfortunate. The tragedy is causing panic among residents who now say they are terrified. Commander of the Operation Vanguard team, Colonel William Norte, says the clash between his team and residents of Ayamfuri was uncalled for and that it shouldn't have happened. Mahmoud Mohamed Nuruddin's report read to you.
A result of one of these arrests that the youths rose up and then had a clash with personnel of Operation Vanguard. And in fact, there was a lot of violence. They vandalized one of our vehicles, and there was close quarter encounters with youths wielding machetes. This is the background of the issue, and unfortunately, a few shots were fired in self-protection, as the firers claimed. As you know, there's still investigations going on to make sure that the bare facts of the issue are also resolved.
2 people died from gunshot wounds during the August 23 clash between Operation Vanguard and the locals, and 3 people were injured. The clash was said to have been fueled by the arrest of 2 of the Operation Vanguard team for allegedly engaging in illegal mining.
So we didn't see why the arrest of one person should lead the youth to riot and attack the Operation Vanguard personnel. It was very unfortunate, as I told them, very regrettable, and something that was preventable. But what I need to emphasize is that there's a lot of lawlessness in these communities, and people think they can take the law into their own hands. They need to desist from that.
Colonel William Norte said the incident was unfortunate, but they are engaging the community to build sustainable peace in the Ayamfuri area.
Signals we picked is that the economic activity and other things are going down, and this will significantly impact the community. So we're urging the leaders to, as urgently as possible, try and reduce the tensions in the community and make sure that we return to the status quo where all commercial activity and life was normal in the community.
Both parties hope the engagement will help maintain law and order for economic activities to surge.
A group of quarry operators is taking up the cost of reconstructing 3 broken bridges in the Fija Kwabre South district of the Shanti region. The structures at Hemang, Krobo and More, estimated to cost 1.3 million Ghana cedis, will be financed through a special fund for community support. Some residents in the catchment area who were cut off from the rest of the district during the rainy season spoke with Joy News. Ohiming Teria has more.
Motorists and other road users, including school children, are forced to look for alternative routes at the slightest downpour.
This bridge is our headache. It is a big issue, especially when it rains. This whole area gets flooded. The only option is to wait for the rain to subside. It means you have to spend the night on whichever side you find yourself at on any occasion. The situation gets worse when a vehicle breaks down in the middle of the road. I cannot quantify the difficulty we go through here. When it started, 2 vehicles could not pass at the same time. It got to a point where we could no longer use the bridge during the rains. This area gets flooded. You dare not attempt because of the strong current. There was no support from any quarters, not even the assembly.
The association has already paid for the construction of the bridges, expected to be completed in record 3 months. Chairman of the Northern Quarry Operators Association, Adusitu Jamfi, spoke to Joy News at a salt cutting ceremony.
The bridges were broken and vehicles couldn't go across.
I believe you've seen for yourself the damage to the bridges. So the first thing was the seed money was to go rebuilding those bridges. My understanding of the cost was about almost 1 million Ghana cedis. But fortunately, the fund has reached almost 1 million Ghana cedis, and we've paid for all the 3 major constructions of the bridges. And I believe the Assembly is also happy. The community are also going to benefit directly from us.
Member of Parliament for the area, Uriaku Edu, was in attendance. District Chief Executive Christian Edupoku commends the quarry operators for their partnership with the Assembly to develop the area.
For the past 60 years, since quarry was introduced to this district, one cannot boast of even one or a single project that a quarry company can point a finger to and say that we did it. So they understood me, we sat down, and we decided to enter into an agreement which we have signed, a memorandum of understanding and agreement we have signed. And in the agreement, they decided to contribute 5 Ghana cedis per every cubic meter they sell, so that we put them together into a fund, and out of this fund, we use to develop the district.
From Kumasi for Joy News, Ohimenteria reporting.
First-year students of the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology have begun arriving on the campus of the university amidst heavy security following threats of a demonstration. A group of Katanga Hall alumni was Thursday stopped from embarking on the protest over the conversion of the male halls to mixed halls. 2 protester groups who converged at separate places outside the campus were picked up in the night by police. Dr. Daniel Berkun is the University Relations Officer.
On the campus of Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology, preparations are underway for students to register officially into the various halls. Now, the halls that are of interest to some parties on campus is what is to my right here, the Continental Unity Hall, as they call it, and University Hall Katanga, which is to my left over there. Now, it's arising out of a checkered history of rivalry between the 2 halls, which has prompted the university authorities to take a decision that they're going to turn these male halls into mixed halls. And that is what has been contested violently by the 2 members of the 2 halls for a very long time. Now, as students prepare to register tomorrow, students of Katanga and the alumni of Katanga have come out strongly to say that they will not allow the mixed hall saga to take effect. And so currently, as I speak with you, they have converged about 1 kilometer from here, and they have been chanting songs and holding placards indicating that they will fight to the last breath to prevent the authorities from turning these halls into mixed halls.
Demonstrate. This is actually not demonstration. We made it today at Maxima as a fraternity to have fun, to have flashbacks and probably think about the future. And suddenly we saw this police patrol all over. This is a private occasion. This occasion doesn't necessarily need a permit from the police. So I'm so shocked that they came here asking.
We are unable to actually authenticate if those people who were picked up outside the campus are real. They are not students. That one I can tell you for sure. They are not students. I hear some of them are past students. Some of them were actually hired to come and foment trouble. But those things are happening off campus, and that one is the Regional Security Council and the police. They will deal with them.
We're taking a break here on Joy News Prime. Stay tuned in.
Let's talk about garbage, filth, trash, refuse, baller. Call it what you will, because it's all around us, on our streets, gutters, and alleys, on our beaches, and in our river bodies. Almost everywhere you go in this country, there is filth strewn all over the place. And we have even had filth heaped at the frontage of the seat of government. I told you, it's everywhere. In fact, it has been our bane for more than 20 years. Every year, the government spends not less than 290 million cedis tackling sanitation. But can we really say we are seeing the benefits of this investment? Just consider the cost of poor sanitation. Many people dying of cholera and diarrhea.
Sewage coming from the homes. Raw sewage.
Yeah, this is...
And this is cholera. Yeah. This is sickness. And the correlation between the sickness and people's lives is not there. People don't understand that this can actually make you sick.
Now in Ghana, available data shows that 19,000 Ghanaians, including 5,100 children under 5, die each year from diarrhea, nearly 90% of which is directly attributed to poor water, sanitation, and hygiene. Now, we all remember what happened during the 2015 Circle fire and flood disaster, which claimed 150 lives. What caused it? It was largely filth that had choked the drains. So, we know the cost of poor sanitation. Then why do we continue to kill ourselves? Because that's what we're doing. We are slowly killing ourselves. We all remember President Akufo-Addo pledging that he would ensure that Accra becomes the cleanest city in Africa at the end of his 4-year term.
By the end of the 4 years of my term in office as president, Accra will be the cleanest city in Africa.
Well, that has not been achieved yet. Yes, the president has a responsibility to fulfill his promises, but you also have the duty to keep your environment clean. It starts with you. This is where we at Multimedia come in. We have partnered with the Accra Metropolitan Assembly for a campaign to make the environment cleaner, one community at a time. And this is what we call the Joy Clean Ghana campaign. This campaign will not be done with the business as usual approach. Once a week, the Joy cameras will follow AMA officials as they inspect a location that is dirty and arrest or penalize offenders. And already we are seeing results.
No, don't say that. You know, if there is a dustbin there, you know there will not be a need for you to come and put. Every day we have been saying today we've come to catch you at the act.
So I want to see brooms here, then you start to show a sign of cleaning the place, then I'll let us go. Correct. Now.
So what does this mean? I mean, clearly, this shows that if city authorities will enforce laws, citizens are most likely to obey, and gradually behaviors and attitudes towards proper sanitation will change. So join us, make this campaign successful. If you see anyone polluting the environment, take action, stop the person, and if you can't, film and tag videos on social media with the hashtag JoyCleanGhana. We need to do this together to stop the environmental genocide. So let's stop the environmental genocide.